Does the opening box office of Toy Story 4 suggest that franchise fatigue is a real thing? Hey everyone, this is Kevin T. Rodriguez, film critic of iCritic.net, and before we talk about the movie, I should mention right now, I actually like Toy Story 4 quite a bit. You know that I am famously lukewarm about Toy Story 3. I think it has a brilliant beginning, a brilliant and absolutely great ending. Most of that stuff with the daycare center is not very important to the story, though. It has nothing to do with the overall theme of saying goodbye to your childhood things and moving on from the world. It doesn't have anything to do with that. So I actually think Toy Story 3 is overall a pretty poorly written film. I mean, still 3 stars, not terrible, but I think Toy Story 4 is the ending I really wanted. The final movie, I should say, what I wanted overall. And yet, it kind of disappointed at the box office, and somehow by making over $100 million. So it says here, Toy Story 4 tops the weekend box office with $118 million in ticket sales, but still opens below expectation. So here's what it says. Toy Story 4 brought the box office to life with $118 million opening weekend after a 3-week slump of underperforming sequels, but the Pixar film's below expectations debut didn't quell continued concerns about a rocky summer movie season. The Toy Story 4 opening, according to Studio Estimates Sunday, ranks as the 4th highest animated film opening ever, not accounting for inflation. Above it are 2018's Incredibles 2, which is $182 million, 2016's Finding Dory, which was $135 million, and 2007's Shrek the Third, $121 million. And by the way, when Shrek the Third came out, ticket prices were a lot cheaper by I think $3 or $4, so a lot of people went to see Shrek the Third. It's the year's 3rd largest debut, trailing only behind a pair of other Disney releases, Avengers Endgames and Captain Marvel. And by the way, that is concerning on a whole nother level, that Disney could potentially have all top 10 movies could be their movies, but that's another topic for another day. Anyway, but heading into the weekend, a $140 to $150 million opening had seemed assured for Toy Story 4, which played in 4,575 North American theaters. Adjusted for inflation, the film came in shy of the $110.3 million, or about $129 million in today's dollars, Toy Story 3 made 9 years ago. The opening for Toy Story 4 followed a string of disappointing sequels, including Dark Phoenix, Godzilla, King of the Monsters, and Men in Black International, but Toy Story 4 had something those films didn't. Great reviews. It rates 98% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. Audiences gave it an A cinema score. The sequel, which introduces the child-made plaything Forky, who, by the way, was nowhere near as annoying as I thought he was going to be. I actually liked him quite a bit. To the voice cast, including Tom Hanks and Tim Allen, also grossed $120 million internationally, including a modest $13.4 million in China, the world's 2nd largest film market. Where, by the way, China, Toy Story 4 was, trumped, totally thrashed by the, for them, new release Spirited Away. So, yeah. Thankfully, international audiences still like 2D animation, and they are keeping the art form alive. So, anyway, you have here that, people come talking about, of course Disney's going to brag about it. They had the number 1 opening weekend, and it was still $120 million. The Pixar team has always been disciplined about making sure they have a compelling story to tell, and that's especially true when it comes to sequels if you look at their past. Their process of sort of going through the rigor of making sure this is a story people want told, the end result speaks for itself. Although that's a very, very lukewarm bragging rights. I think they were really expecting it to do a lot more. And to be honest, I was expecting it to do a little bit more too. And yet, I think there's a reason it didn't do well. Well, first of all, let me tell you what everyone else is saying. A lot of other people are questioning why this happened. Did people not want a Toy Story 4? I mean, that's probably not true. People always want more of everything, although I think there's some merit to that. Some people say, well, maybe there's just too many new releases. Maybe, there's finite amount of money. Movie Pass isn't really a thing anymore, although AMC Stubs A-List is. So, and apparently Regal's going to launch their thing soon. Was Avengers just sucking too much of the money? And I think the answer is people are getting tired of sequels and reboots. Because here's the thing. Toy Story 4 is not the first indication that we have that something is wrong. Truthfully, we've had this feeling for a while. Now let's look at Toy Story 3. It ultimately grossed $1 billion nationwide, but it opened at $110 million. Now, if you go to Toy Story 4, that opening weekend was $120 million. So, it bumped up a little a little bit. You know, definitely not bad, but that is, for something that was always going way, way up, that's pretty bad. This might make $1 billion, but I doubt it. I think it's gonna make about half, and that will be the true sign that something's going. But look over here at Solo. Solo. Oh, this is the wrong Solo movie. This is the wrong Solo movie. I am so sorry. Let's go. Oh, let's go back to Solo. This is the Solo I wanted. Solo, a Star Wars story. This thing grossed a little under 400 million worldwide. Now, some people say that, you know, it's because people did not like The Last Jedi, which I think is actually not entirely true. First of all, The Last Jedi made a lot of money for a movie people didn't like. And also, people who like that movie really like that movie, including me. I actually think it's the best Star Wars movies, to be perfectly honest. And I'm not like an SJW, you know, female power thing. I like that it really took Star Wars and it evolved it and it did something really new and different with it, which I find personally exciting. And I think years later it's going to be like The Empire Strikes Back, where it's like, yeah, it was a risk, but it was a risk well worth taking. And it made over $1 billion, so people clearly loved it enough to see it. However, I think people were fatigued of Star Wars. You can't have 2 Star Wars movies within 6 months. But Star Wars isn't the only one. Mary Poppins Return. This thing was expected to be a $1 billion hit. It made about $350 million. You go over here, The Nutcracker in the Four Realms. I think they were expecting this to be like a 400 something. They were obviously expecting something from this. It made less than 200 million. Heck, it made less than 175 million. Now, that's not a sequel, but it is based on a name of something. It is, in a sense, a reboot of the Nutcracker story. And Disney was doing what they did with it, and people just did not care. Now, here's an interesting thing. When you look at the original Godzilla, this thing made over $500 million worldwide with an opening weekend of $93 million. Now, some people say that this could have been bigger because people really didn't like the human parts. They liked the monster parts. I'm personally going to disagree. With all due respect to people who like Godzilla, yeah, it's not strictly speaking a Godzilla film, but like The Last Jedi, I like that it did something new. I like that it tried something different. And so I personally like the movie quite a bit. However, people said they wanted more Godzilla and more explosion, more monster, and they got it. And guess what? No one is showing up. Now, it might still make about the same amount of money, however, with a higher budget. I don't know. Especially since this thing is actually almost gone. This might actually make less than the first Godzilla. So the Godzilla series is definitely in trouble. Now, what about Men in Black International? I'm not bringing up the previous movies because this is also a reboot, but look at what it's made so far. A little under $200 million, and it's almost dead already. And $110 million budget. This is going to lose them a couple $100 million. Here we have The Secret Life of Pets. This is the first one. Now, the first movie made almost $1 billion, $875 million worldwide, and it opened with $104 million. This is a very average movie, by the way. Well, I consider it bad. However, it's not offensively bad. It's just like, it's just not very good. Now, what's funny about this is like Universal was like, I think, expanding their theme parks to include more Secret Life of Pets. They really wanted Secret Life of Pets to be one of their next big things. And yet, after all that investment with Secret Life of Pets 2, it's only made $200 million so far. Its opening weekend was $46 million. This is probably not even going to make $500 million, which, you know what? Here's the thing. $300 million, I think, is too much money for this movie. I mean, it's an average movie. $200 million sounds like that makes sense. And it only costs $80 million, so it will be profitable. However, it shows that people are not flocking out to this nearly as much as they would have hoped. If we continue, Child's Play. Now, this is only a $10 million production budget, so this will make money. However, the reason they are rebooting is because Chucky is an iconic horror character. Child's Play was one of the much better horror movies from the 80s. And so, yeah, like, let's update it, let's reboot it, and instead of it being like a soul spirit, let's make it like connect with technology, you know, kind of like the whole concerns people have with Alexa, which is why I don't have an Alexa, and I don't have a Google Home, and I don't have a Siri. I don't want a listening device. And, you know, tap into that fear. However, considering how much money horror movies tend to make, they tend to have like $30, $40 million openings, and they're really cheap. The fact that it opened at $14 million when the competition was Toy Story 4, so that's like great counter programming, and Toy Story 4 didn't even do as well as they thought it would. This is like pretty pitiful. It kind of shows that the reboots are kind of on the edge here. Let's continue with a few more examples. Dark Phoenix, X-Men movies. These things used to pack the theaters. Now, granted, Dark Phoenix was really not very good. However, X-Men Origins Wolverine wasn't very good. X-Men 3 The Last Stand wasn't very good. And I would even argue the Wolverine was fairly average. And yet those movies were all very successful. Dark Phoenix is tanking. Worldwide, less than $250 million. Opened at $32 million. I mean, granted, Disney's going to reboot anyway. However, one thing I'm hoping that this bomb kind of encourages Disney to wait 10 years before attempting to do X-Men again. I think we need a break at that point. Now, look at Shaft. Now, this pains me to put in here because I actually liked this Shaft movie. Me and Dad saw it. We were kind of bored. He was over, and I was like, well, let's just see it. And it's like, hey, we actually kind of like that. It's only made $17 million so far. Its opening weekend was $8 million. So this thing really is not doing very well. Now, what was the last one like? $70 million. Like, wow. Opening weekend, $21 million. Major difference. Now, granted, not a lot of people were aware that, this one was out, and yet it should still do comparable numbers, I would think. Now, finally, Dumbo. This thing cost $170 million, which means this is probably like a $300 million movie once you factor marketing into it. And worldwide, less than $400 million. I think the writing's on the wall, folks. I think the sequels and the reboots thing, it's more or less done. Granted, there are bright spots. Obviously, the Marvel movies are still doing well. Aladdin was a surprise hit. However, and the chances are The Lion King will do very good because people just really like The Lion King. However, I think we're in the beginning phases of the reboot and the sequel starting to do significantly less business. People are getting tired of seeing the same thing, and it's been this way for like a decade. I mean, once you have like Disney's animation division making sequels instead of original movies, like that's when I think you realize we've gone too far. Because look, I loved Frozen. I love Zootopia. I liked Wreck-It Ralph. I did not need to see sequels to any of them. I do not need to see sequels to any of these movies. So, Wreck-It Ralph 2 did okay. I don't think it did as well as they would have wanted. And I'm thinking Frozen 2 is not going to be the big breakout hit that they want it to be. Because people don't want to see Frozen 2 at this point. They want to see something new. And the box office has been showing for the last several months that people are rejecting the sequels, the reboots. They're just rejecting them. Yes, Avengers did very, very well, but that was considered like a cap-off to 10-year legacy. And a lot of people walking out of that theater said, oh yeah, that's a great way to end the series. And it's like, and here's Kevin Feige, the producer, going on TV saying, hey, no. Spider-Man Far From Home, that's the true end of Phase 3 of Marvel. And I think Spider-Man Far From Home is going to underperform. Not fail, I think it's obviously going to make money, but I don't think it's going to do as well as people think it is. I think The Lion King might also not be the $2 billion hit that people think it is. Maybe just $700 million. So I think hopefully within the next year or two, the studios are going to realize they just can't keep repackaging the same material over and over. They're going to have to invest in new stuff. Although knowing Hollywood, they might just take the lesson from this, like, well, maybe we just need to release fewer movies, but they can all still be reboots and sequels, and so we might have to wait 5 more years before this lesson really sinks in, especially since the next 10 years for most of these movies are already planned out, and they've got cinematic universes. We've got a cinematic universe for Hanna-Barbera coming out. The first movie is going to be Scoob. Like Scooby-Doo. Anyway, I'm personally done with all this, and I have to say, on a final note, with Toy Story 4, I like this movie quite a bit. And yet, because I am so tired of sequels, I don't even write reviews anymore, because what's the point? You're writing about the same thing over and over and over again. I'm personally glad these movies are failing. I'm glad they're underperforming. I'm glad in many cases they're bombing. Because how many bombs do you have to have before you wake up? I mean, it's like, look, there's a bomb. There's a bombed bomb. Let's cut back on that one. Like, there's a bomb. There's a bomb. Bomb. That's the original. There's a bomb. Not a bomb, but an underperformer. There's a bomb. There's a bomb. And there's a bomb. I mean, geez, we've talked about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think we talked about 10 bombs because I don't know what happened. I think I moved the Nutcracker out of this, but like 10 bombs in 6 months. 10 bombs that will lose them over $100 million each film in some cases. Maybe not Secret Life of Pets 2, but in most of these cases, these movies are losing $100 to $200 million. That cannot stand, and it can't go on. So anyway, I think hopefully sooner rather than later, we will see this reboot and reimagining and sequel phase come to an end. And maybe it's like, hey, let's start looking at the upcomers. Let's see what they're working on. Let's start investing in their projects. Start working on smaller movies that maybe could become big, great things. Anyway, that's my opinion. What do you folks think? Are you surprised that these movies are failing? Are you hoping that we move away from this, or does this concern you because you really, really like watching these movies and you want to see them continue? I'd love to know. Comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe. If you enjoy my videos, consider becoming a Patreon member. It's totally optional, of course, but even as little as $1 a month goes a long way to helping the channel run smoothly, and you get access to my Patreon's exclusive blog. And as always, flame responsibly. Have a good one.